Hi, I would now like to show you how I knit a jacket or a cardigan like this, step by step. It has steeked and sewn in sleeves and steeked front opening, and I will show you everything from the cast on to how I make the sleeves and how I assemble it and how I make the button bands and everything else. I will place some more information on my website with some written information and pictures, and this will be over several episodes showing each step, and at the end of each video I will place a link to the next step. So now I have found my circular needle and my yarn, and I'm ready to cast on. So I begin by making a slip knot, and I place it onto my needle like this, and I just pull to, not to make it very tight, but to just make it sit okay on my needle. It should not be too tight because it will be difficult to knit it when you knit the first row. So this is my first stitch and I'm ready to cast on, and the cast on I have chosen is because I want the ribbing to be elastic, and by doing it this way the edge of the ribbing will be as elastic as the ribbing itself. You will not feel any more tension to it when you pull than the ribbing itself. So I place the yarn between my middle finger and my thumb like this, and I use my index finger, and I go from down underneath the yarn and up, and I twist to make a loop around my index finger, and I place my needle here on top of the yarn, and I move down to the tip of my index finger like this and up through the loop, and I just slip it onto the needle like this, and I slightly pull the yarn, again not to make it too tight but just to make it sit close to the last stitch, and again I go from down and up, twist, needle on top, down to the tip of my index finger, up through the loop like this, and I'll just continue in the same manner until I have the right number of stitches on my needle. And when I have done so, I will get back to you on how I do and what I need to think about when I start knitting. Now I have finished my cast on, and I am ready to begin to knit the ribbing. And even though this is a jacket knitted in the round, I will begin by knitting the ribbing back and forward. And I begin by slipping the first stitch, and then I will knit one and purl one throughout the row. And as you can see now, because of my cast on, I'll have to concentrate a bit because all the stitches are unstable. If I pull, this will get tighter and this gap will get bigger. And to try and avoid this gap, you just make sure when you have done one stitch that instead of pulling, I just move the stitch close to the last one, no pulling, and then I knit the next stitch, and here you can see there's almost no gap, but as soon as I pull, You can see it gets bigger, but it's easily mended, as you can see, so it is really no problem. And if you have done a very tight cast on, it can be difficult to pick up and stick the needle through the stitches like this. So as you can see, it will take a bit longer to finish the first row. I had to loosen that a little bit, but it will create a ribbing that has the same elasticity also in the edge. So I will continue to knit, and I will get back to you on how to do next step, and to show you how elastic the edge of this ribbing will become, and also how good it looks. So it's not easy to see that now, but it will become visible as you go along and knit a few more rows. So, but the issues I am talking about now, they only affect you on the first row. After getting to the end here and turning back, it will be as normal again. So a bit more work to complete the first row, but well worth it in my opinion when you see the result. So I will continue, and I will get back to you when my ribbing is finished. Now I have knitted most of the ribbing, and you can see the edge of it looks like this. And when I stretch it, you can see that it stretches along with the ribbing itself, and I get no hard edge here. You can see that the edge itself is quite elastic. So this is the result when you cast on the way I did. And now I am at the end of the row, and I am ready to make the first buttonhole. And where you place the buttonholes and how many it should be is either stated in your pattern or you decide yourself. And in my case, I want to cast off 3 stitches for my buttonhole, and I want it to be 4 stitches from the end of my row. If I were to make the buttonhole in the beginning of the row, I would just begin here and knit until I had done 4 stitches, and then I would start to cast off. So you can do it from both sides, but now I'm doing it in the end of my row. So now I have counted that I have 3 stitches that I want to cast off to make my buttonhole, and I have 4 more to end my row. So then I will just knit the 2 first stitches, and I continue to follow my ribbing. So 1, 2, and when I have done 2 stitches, I take the first stitch and I slip it over the second and off the needle. So now I have cast off 1 stitch. Then I purl the next to make it fit the ribbing here, and then I take the last one and slip it over and off the needle. So now I have cast off 2 stitches. So then I knit 1 more, and I cast off the 3rd stitch. and I'm left with 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches and a hole here. But this is only one side of the buttonhole. I have to make the top of the buttonhole as well. So I will just finish the row. And I will begin the next row, and I will, as usual, I slip the first stitch, continue to make the ribbing, and here now I have done 4 stitches, and I want to complete the buttonhole. I simply take my working yarn and I cast on 3 new stitches, the same way as I did when I started to cast on for the ribbing. So that's 3. And when I have done that, I will just continue the same way. I make sure the first stitch sits close to the 3 I just cast on, and I'll just continue to knit the ribbing back and forward until it has the length that I am looking for, and when it has, I will get back to you on how to start doing the main section of the body. My ribbing is finished. Here you can see the buttonhole, and now I will do 3 things. I will connect my work here so that I can begin to knit in the round. I will change my needle into one that is half a size bigger, and I will transfer some of the stitches onto a stitch holder and let them sit there so that I can use them later for button bands. So I will begin with one of the button bands, and this is the end with my working yarn. And here I will take these 9 stitches and I will just transfer them onto a safety pin like this. And you don't have to use a safety pin, you can use any type of stitch holder, and you can knit it onto some leftover yarn, or you could use even a hairpin will do just fine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Stitch number here may vary from pattern to pattern, or what you prefer, if you want the button band to be wide or narrow. So that's one, and here at the other end I have my working yarn, so I have to bring that along so that I don't have to cut it. The more times you cut the yarn, the more yarn ends to attach later. So here I have a much larger safety pin, and I will just use that as a knitting needle. If you have something else, you just use the you just use the knitting needle and you knit, but I happen to have this one, so I just use that to knit the 9 first stitches onto it. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But then of course you could use the circular needle and you knit 9 stitches and then you place them onto a stitch holder. So, and now I want to make a few stitches that go in the front because I want to start to knit in the round, and then I need to connect these 2 pieces, and when I do, I simply take my working yarn and I cast on new stitches here in the front, and I choose to do 8 stitches. I think that is enough. Seven, 8, and now I am ready to connect, and I will begin to knit. Make sure that there is no big gaps on the sides here. And now I will continue in stockinette, no more ribbing. And then I will also change into half a size bigger needles. The reason why I didn't do it here at the beginning now is because I have so much going on here now. Newly cast on stitches, safety pins, and I have enough happening here, so just to avoid it getting messier, really, I just knit a few stitches to connect everything okay, and then I can begin to knit all my stitches onto my bigger needle. So I will continue to knit throughout the round to get all my stitches onto my new needle. And now when I arrive here and it is time to knit my 8 stitches, these I will purl. And the reason why is because these are not a part of my pattern, and I do not count them in my stitch number. They are only here to serve as a steek. I want to cut through these stitches, and by purling them I create a clearly visible edge on each side that shows me very easily where to place my machine stitches when I sew my machine seam, because I will do that on each side and then I will cut in the middle. So it is to it's really to divide the jacket pattern from this band in the middle that is only for cutting. So I will do knit stitches all the way around and 8 purl stitches here in the front for the part that I want to cut. So now I will continue and I will get back to you when it is time to start the color work. Now I'm ready to begin to knit my color pattern, and you can now see my band for steeking and how it is knitted in purl stitches, and it creates a nice it divides my jacket pattern from the piece I want to cut in. So next step now is to add a new color yarn, and I have mine here. It is a darker blue, and I just wrap it around my finger like this, just to be able to put some tension on it without losing the yarn. And I hold it over my fingers like this. There are many ways of holding the yarn when knitting with multiple colors, but this is how I like to do it. And no matter how you hold your yarns, what I think is the most important when knitting in stranded color work is to be consistent in where the colors are placed. My habit is to always keep my main or bottom color closest to me and my pattern color away from me. And that makes it also easier for me to remember which goes where. And the reason why I do it is because it is difficult to keep equal tension on both yarns. And when knitting with 2 yarns with unequal tension, the looser yarn will create bigger stitches, and the yarn with more tension on it will create slightly smaller stitches, a bit firmer stitches. And that's okay. The difference is usually not that big, and it will not be visible in your pattern. But if you change places, then the opposite color yarn will create smaller stitches and bigger stitches, and when that happens, then it becomes visible. So unless you are able to knit with the exact same tension on both yarns all the time, this is the way to go. I always do it just to make sure, so that I don't have to think about it all the time and check. So now I'm ready to begin to knit my pattern, and I knit just as usual, but I pick up the color yarn I need to make the pattern I am creating. So when I need the light blue, I pick that up. I can let this go now, and then I can change to my other color, and I continue like this. And if you look at the wrong side here, you can see that when I knit with the light blue, the darker color just floats across here on the wrong side, and it should lie close here to the knitwork, and it should not hang in loops like this, then it is too loose. but if you pull too tight, if you watch here, if I pull this too tight, you can see here that I pull the stitches together. And if you do that, you will have a pattern that will get these wavy look, because you'll have a couple stitches in between and the color stitches will be pulled together on the wrong side, creating this bump, and that is very visible and it does not look good. So if you have some training or experience knitting with 2 or more colors, it's no problem. But if you are new to this, it could be a good thing to just check on the wrong side every now and then, just to see that it looks even and that the yarn floats are just lying close but is not pulled or not hanging like loops. And to make sure that it's not too tight, you can try to stretch it to see if it has elasticity. And that should make it not too difficult to begin to knit with 2 colors. So now I will continue and I will knit my pattern. And when I have knitted most of my front and back pieces and it is time to shape the neck opening, I will get back to you on how I do that. Now I have knitted most of the body and I'm ready to begin shaping the neck hole. And you can see where I have done my purl stitches to make this band that is for machine stitching and steeking. And this is the middle front, and here we will make the button bands later. So the first step in shaping the neck hole will be to place a few stitches from the front onto a stitch holder. In my case, this will be 10 stitches from each side. I do not count these 8 stitches that I have made for the steeking. And so I will begin here and take 10 stitches from here, and I will begin here and take 10 stitches from there. And I will use just another circular needle. You can use safety pins or whatever you have that is usable. You can also knit it onto some leftover yarn. That's 10 stitches there, and I will just pull my needle through and continue on the other side. And then I will first transfer these 8 stitches here and now I will count 10 stitches, and the number of stitches that you begin by placing on onto the stitch holder, these are stated in the pattern you are following. So if it says 30 stitches from the front, it means 15 from each side. of this. And if you knit a sweater, it just means the 30 stitches in the center front. Ten. Like this, and these will just sit here and wait. And here I have my yarn, and I will continue to knit my 2-color pattern. And what I will do is, and this will also be individual and according to your pattern, I will just check that I begin on the right stitch in my pattern. And I can see here, because I will begin to do this pattern again, and then I will just follow the first stitch down, and I see that I will begin here. So I will get my yarn, and I just find some way to secure it so that I can put some tension on the yarn without losing it when I begin to knit. And now, from now, I will knit back and forward, and so I will just continue now to knit my pattern. I can let these go now, because now my yarn is attached. And now I will just knit this row, and when I arrive here at the end, I'll get back to you on how to do the next step. So now I have arrived at the end of the row, and then I turn my work so that I face the wrong side, and I will begin to decrease to shape this round shape of the neck opening. And as I said earlier, I will only decrease in, or cast off, in the beginning of the row. So that means that in this row I will have to cast off from the wrong side. And what I do is that I will cast off 3 stitches. I slip the first, and I purl the second. It's a bit tricky when I have my working yarn on this side, so I'll just help it through like this. And I make sure that I always keep my yarn on my near side, or that I keep my yarns on the wrong side, and that will also keep the yarn floats on the wrong side. So I'll show you what I mean. First I will cast off my first stitch, just take the first one and slip over the second like that, and I will purl one more stitch, and cast off one more stitch. Now I have cast off 2 stitches, and 3, and now I can just continue to knit and to follow my pattern. So it is just like knitting stranded color work from the knit side, only I need to keep my yarn floats on this side as opposed to on this side as I am used to. If I do as I usually do and keep my yarn floats here, then they will end up on the right side and it will show. And I don't want strands there, so I will just always check that I have my yarn floats on the wrong side. And I'll knit my pattern. So it will just be like normal purling, only I have to watch where my yarn ends up, and you can now see quite clearly that I get my yarn floats where they should be. So now I will just continue to purl throughout the row, and when I arrive here I will cast off the same 3 stitches from this side, and I will get back to you on how I do it from the right side. So now I am at the end of my purl row, and I will turn again to the right side, and I will cast off 3 stitches here as well. And when I cast off from the right side or knit side, I do the same thing and I follow the pattern. So I slip the first stitch and I knit the second, then I take the first stitch and I slip it over the second and off the needle. I knit another stitch, slip the first over and the third stitch and slip. And now I have cast off 3 stitches and I can follow my pattern and knit throughout the row. And when I arrive here at the end, I will turn again and I will decrease another time, another stitch number, and I'll continue to do so and follow my pattern until I am finished with my decreases, and then I will get back to you with the next step. So now the body of the jacket is finished. I have shaped the neck opening here, so you can see the shape clearly here on each side, and I have the middle stitches in the front on my stitch holder, and here I have the row that will go on top of the shoulder. So I will just leave the needles in And the next step is to make the sleeves. And here at the end of this video I will place a link to another video where I show how to make the sleeves step by step.